Welcome. Today we're going to discuss the technique Fatal Deviation and some of the different ways in which we can relate it to other elements of the American Kenpo system. Now keep in mind two things. One, this is not a full comprehensive list, it's far from it. And two, this is not family groupings. Rather, it's just different avenues that we can take to explore and understand the American Kenpo system a little bit better. So before we begin, let's discuss the fact that Fatal Deviation is basically 4 sequences put together to form the technique. So the way we're going to be doing our relationship is not going to be through the technique itself, but rather each of those different sections or sequences. So let's start out at the beginning with the first sequence. This would be the inward block, outward block, followed by our punch and our chop. So we'll call this the first sequence. So the interesting thing to notice is that the ideal face does it from a right-left straight punch combination. But can we alter the attack and still do the same technique? Well, yeah, we can do the single version where they only throw the right hand. And it doesn't matter if it's circular or straight because we can go right into our technique. But is that the only way we can do that? Well, no. If you take a look at something like the late sword, this could have been done even off the graph. We can go right into the late sword. But just like we can do just the right, we can also do the left. They can come in with the left. And again, we can go into Fatal Deviation, or just like the late sword, we can go into something like Sword of Destruction. But up to this point, we've been countering with the foot rather than with the hand. So can we keep the counters to the high zone? Well, this would bring us something like Shielding Hammer, where we continue to do the high zone. But remember, this started out with a combo. So what if he throws the left and then follows it with the right? Well, I can continue the sequence and go into something like Unfurling Crane, or, again, we can reverse the sequence, and I can go right back to my Fatal Deviation. But keep in mind that we could also go into Entwined Maces, the ending of it. So once I get to here, I can now go into the end of Entwined Maces. But can we do the beginning of Entwined Maces? Well, yeah, if we did the same punches, but now go to the outside of the arms rather than the inside, we get Entwined Maces from the beginning that we can relate it to, because we're basically doing the same sequence. But can we do a combination of staying to the outside of the arms, but countering with our leg? Well, this would bring in something like Circling Fans, where if you notice, we're staying to the outside of the arms, but now using the leg and the hand to counter, rather than both of the hands. So I think that's enough of the first sequence. Let's move on to the second sequence. In this case, gaseous motion. So this would be where we're doing all those different directions at the same time, or pretty close to it. And let's continue this relationship through Circling Fans, because that's where we just left off. If you notice where we were, we ended up here. What are we doing? Well, we're doing that gaseous motions, but slightly different. So in Fatal Deviation, we control the depth and then the width by getting the head to go to the left and the knees to go to the right. So how are we doing it in Circling Fans? Well, if you notice, we're controlling the height by pressing down, then controlling the depth, and then controlling the height again going up. So now we're doing height with depth, and before we did depth with width. So can we do a combination? Let's do width with depth. This will bring in something like Tripping Arrow. So if you notice, what we're doing here is I'm controlling their height zone while starting to attack the width, and then again, getting their head to go in one direction while we get the legs to go in the opposite direction. But now that we did that, let's do one more where we do it from behind. In this case, something like Menacing Twirl, where again, the idea is to start using that gaseous motion. But this is going to lead us right into that third sequence, starting from the elbow to the buckle and the hammer. Because we can relate this section of the technique to the previous section, because that also uses gaseous motion. But let's move on and look at this from position recognition. Look at where we are now. What can we do from here? What options do we have? Well, again, we can continue with Fatal Deviation and do what we do, or we can alter it and do something like Spreading Branches. We could even do something like the end of Entwined Maces again, where we come up, hit them, and continue this way. Or guess what? We could even go all the way back to the beginning and do something like Unfurling Crane, where now I come up to center. So now that we did that sequence, let's finish it up with the final sequence. In this case, what we're doing after the buckle, where we're doing the knee and the eye slice, and then followed up by the last maneuver. So the idea here is that we're using midpoint balance. So let's start relating this through that concept. Again, this uses direct opposites. So let's look at something like Prance of the Tiger. If he was coming in with that uppercut, we're doing the same thing here, where we're doing that midpoint balance to do that opposition. But let's relate it to something like dance of darkness. And let's do the opposite side so you can see it better on the camera, where we get to here, and we're now, again, using that same motion, but now from behind them. And keep in mind that for a further study of this eye slices, we could also look at finger set and the isolation of form 4, where we're facing to the rear. So the way we just related fatal deviation to other elements of the American Kenpo system was by breaking down each section individually and then giving you different options based on the considerations that we were exploring. We hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system a little bit better. Thank you very much.